Meeting started so we can get out of the usual amount of time. I'd like to first thank everybody for coming here tonight. The Holly Maddie, who is with Crossroads Community Planning, has been hired by the township, because we don't have the expertise, to actually guide a strategic planning committee to investigate how annexation, sewer, for the township. What we're trying to do is get ahead of the situation as opposed to becoming no offense to Liberty Township or Orange Township or Genoa, but that's not what we want here. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly, and she's going to explain the guidelines. There will be time for questions at the end of the meeting, so please hold your questions till then. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me? Awesome, great. Thank you so much for coming. I love this turnout. This shows how much you value your community and how much you want to see that it is protected as you move forward with the threats and the opportunities that surround you, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. As Bob said, my name is Holly Maddie. I'm the president and owner of Crossroads Community Planning, and the Strategic Planning Committee in Harlem Township have hired my firm to help guide them through the process of how to form and control what's coming your way, which we will be diving into here in a little bit. I also have with me tonight George Maddie. He's actually my husband, but he's also my partner in crime, my business partner. We both have masters of city and regional planning. And he has more of a housing background. I have more of a land use, zoning, and long range planning background. And together we come and we bring ideas and potential plans to communities. So let's start by talking about where we have been. My computer won't slide forward, but I will let you in the back move forward. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is threefold. The first thing is that the township wants to inform residents of development activities taking place in and around Harlem Township. Of course, you're all familiar with the Intel announcement that was made in January, but that's not the only thing that is coming toward your borders. There are other things such as Google and Facebook and other larger developments in neighboring communities that are creeping closer and closer to Harlem Township. And then there are actually activities that are taking place within your borders of the township that we want to make you aware of tonight. Secondly, we want to better understand your viewpoint. You are the residents. We want to understand what your vision is and what your ideas are. We want to understand if you think these are threats or these are opportunities, or maybe they're both, and how do we merge those together? And we would like to learn more about what you think about various tools to help guide development, guide everything through these processes. And again, part of that is through education and learning more about what those tools are. And then finally, we'd like to identify the best communication methods to disseminate information to you as residents of the township. We understand that we're living in a different world. There are many different types of communication methods out there, ranging from the traditional newspaper all the way to social media. And how do we navigate that and make sure we're reaching all the touch points for all the different ways that people communicate? Tonight, if you haven't signed in on your way out, and I'll say this again at the end, make sure you sign in. There's a place for you to put your email address. That way we can shoot emails out in mass and provide updates to you as a community. Next slide, please. So let's kind of talk about the strategic plan and who they are, and planning committee and who they are, and what their goal and vision is for the township. The Harlem Township trustees appointed this 7-member committee. They actually appointed it prior to the Intel announcement. The committee was formed to create a long-range comprehensive plan for the township.
Can you screen share
I thought I am. What am I screen sharing?
the PowerPoint? It's true that we're still seeing you.
My screen, it's just showing the one slide. It will not advance for some reason. So I don't know why it's doing that. It will not advance to the next slide.
Well, you can always just post the slide.
Yep.
Separately.
Yep. Okay, sorry. Oh, now it's going. It just had to think. All right, there we go. You're welcome. Sorry about that technical snafu there. So the committee was appointed to complete the strategic plan back in 2021. The township actually adopted the strategic plan at the end of 2021 in the fall, before Intel was announced. So what that plan calls for versus what is reality today is a little bit of a disconnect. So they looked to the trustees reappointed the strategic planning committee to try to navigate that disconnect and figure out what are the missing pieces that the township needs to do now that we have such a large development such as Intel sitting outside your door. So at this time, I'm going to introduce the strategic planning committee so that you can put a face to the names. First of all, we have Carl Richardson, who is a township trustee who serves on the board. Next we have Tom Mead, who sits on the zoning commission. Next, we have Jen Steele-Smith, who's on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Next, we have Matthew Kurtz, who's the zoning inspector. And then we have 3 residents that are at-large representatives. We have Steve Eisenbrown, who's over here at the computers. We have Bob Singer, who introduced you. And last but not least, we have Jennifer Tisch. So I really appreciate this group. This group has been great to work with and helping to guide this process. So as you learn who they are, I encourage you to continue conversations with them so that we can get the best feedback with them. So again, they have been appointed to help navigate through this process. That's when they decided to hire our firm to provide the technical expertise to move that forward. And we're actually creating what's called a quick strategy guide. It's when you do a long-range strategic plan, which they just finished, it can be a year to a year and a half to do something like that. We don't have that kind of time. So we're doing a quick strategy in response to what is outside of your door. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the process that we utilized to get to where we are tonight, and that's going to help set the stage for where we go over the next few months. So we're going to go to the next slide, and that's going to talk about the very first activity that I did with the committee at our first meeting, and that was a SWOT analysis. For those of you who are not familiar with SWOT analysis, it is an assessment method that is utilized for identifying a community's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The purpose of the activity is really to tease out the things that are affecting a community. And in this particular case, 2 things really rose to the top as we completed this activity. You'll see there are a number of things on here. It's probably hard to read on the screen. This PowerPoint will be on the website for the township so that you can kind of dig into that deeper. But there were a number of things that were on the list, but 2 things that rose to the top. The first one, understanding the location of where future sewers are and how they affect the township. And the second thing, improving communication methods with the township residents. So those are the two topics we're really going to cover tonight and dig a little deeper into. So let's start with sewers. We can go to the next slide. Sewers are coming at the township from three directions. At the township line near Smothers Road roundabout, the city of Columbus is extending a sewer trunk line that is going to stop just inside the township border right near Smothers Road. And it's expected that that will be completed no later than 2026. Delaware County has an agreement with the city of Columbus to extend feeder lines into Harlem Township and be the service provider for those sewers. Then, in addition to that, there is potential for sewers at the southeast corner of the township near County Line Road, and then also to the north coming out of Galena, which we're going to talk about all three of those areas in more detail in just a minute. But that is something that we have identified as we go through this process. So why is this important? Sewers provide capacity for new development. To put this into perspective, if these sewers could provide enough capacity that you could be at a population equivalent to an Orange Township or a Liberty Township that Rob alluded to before. And do we want to be like that? Let's plan for this because we know it's coming. Let's plan so that we can be who you want to be. This additional sewer capacity is attractive to developers. As our group has worked through this exploration process, we have uncovered a number of large parcels that are being held by real estate investment companies in the township, and they're holding that property for future development. Developers often look at neighboring communities for annexation. For those of you who do not know what annexation is, it is the legal process from taking property out of the control of the township and putting it into the legal hands of a municipality or a village, such as the city of Columbus or the village of Galena, which are just outside of your doorsteps. So what happens when something gets annexed? The township loses control. It loses control over the design, it loses control over the density and the layout of the development. And in reality, you lose the potential revenue that comes from that. So the development still happens. You still have it in your backyard, but you don't have the control over what it looks like, and you don't see the revenue that's generated from it. So there are several cities that are just outside of your township. So Columbus, Galena, New Albany, several of them that are sitting there. But developers often look to these communities for different things. In this case, they don't need the sewers. The sewers are coming from different directions already. What they do need are development strategies. They need economic tools, and they need zoning. And sometimes they go to these cities and say, can you give us what you need? And then they annex it for those reasons. So that's why it's essential that the township sets itself up to understand how to be competitive in that area, because annexation can be a big threat to the township, and you are vulnerable to it. So this is the reason why it has risen to the top as a big concern for this committee. So moving on to the next slide. I already touched briefly on the three immediate areas where we think sewers will be in relatively near future. But I don't want this group or the committee or the township to lose sight of what I'm calling as an on watch area, which is the area south of Gorsuch, but north of Fancher Road. It's not an area that is adjacent to an existing municipality, so it's not an immediate threat for annexation. It's not an area where sewers are coming within the next 2 years or so. But I don't want you to lose sight of it, because once the sewers get up that way, it will explode if it's not controlled properly. And it is an area that's being held by some of the developers. So that's what I'm considering an on watch area. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's start with the areas of immediate concerns. The first is the potential, next slide, please. The first is the potential for development on the south side of the township. To give you a little perspective, there's a dotted red line that's going left to right in the middle of your screen. That is the South Township border. Just north of that is that blue area you see. Off to the right on the screen is County Line Road. And then kind of running through the middle area is Fancher Road. You will see where I have marked on their potential future sewer location. This area is shown on a 2017 plan from the city of Columbus of a sewer line coming up County Line Road and terminating right at the southeast corner of the township. It's my understanding that the city of Columbus is in the process of renegotiating the agreement for that sewer and the plan for that sewer because of Intel. And it's my understanding that's taking place through this summer. So hopefully we'll know more about what's happening with that soon. But I'm anticipating that in some kind of capacity, there will be a sewer coming up in that area on a plan of some sort for the future. There's also a 100-acre parcel that's being held by an investment company that has potential to develop once that sewer is brought there. And then that opens up that surrounding area in blue for future development. So area number 2 of immediate concern is the south side of Fancher Road between Harlem Road and 605. I'm going to grab a drink of water here real quickly. To put this into perspective on the screen, again, we have that red dotted line kind of in the middle of your screen. That is the south boundary of the township. On the left-hand side, going up and down, north-south is Harlem Road. And on the right-hand side of the screen is State Route 605. Again, Fancher Road is running east and west in the middle, and that blue area is just south of Fancher Road. You will see that I have marked the approximate location of where the city of Columbus trunk line sewer will be no later than 2026. There are parcels within that blue area that are being held by investment companies for potential development. So as soon as the sewer gets there, they can develop. Then they will most likely look for annexation if they do not have the zoning that they need or any other incentives that they need in that area. Moving on to the third area. This is an area that was a little bit of a surprise to everyone as we started to look into all of these sewer possibilities. This is the northwest corner of the township. To put this map into perspective, there's a dotted line running left and right in the middle of the screen. That is the north boundary of the township. There's a red dotted line running up and down on your left-hand side of the screen near the blue. That is your west township boundary. So everything in the blue is that northwest corner of the township. You will see Galena off to the left-hand, upper left-hand side of the screen. So you can see how close Galena is to you. So why is this important? In 2020, the village of Galena completed a $5.5 million update to their wastewater treatment system. And it now has a 250,000 gallon a day capacity. That's a lot of capacity. And it's just a short distance from your northwest corner. Now, in order for sewers to be extended, they would most likely require annexation. In order to be annexed, property must be contiguous to the township. The township must be contiguous to the village. You can see in this case, it's close, but not contiguous. But when we started to look at property records and owners, even though there are a number of parcels between those two communities, they are under the ownership of two different owners. So the ability for land assembly is just getting two landowners to agree. And then it could be potential for sewers to be extended in that area. So for that reason, we have this area as an immediate concern as well. This, yep, next slide, there we go. This is the on watch area that I have alluded to. So on this screen, you have State Route 605 running up and down on kind of on the right hand side between the yellow and the blue parcels. And then you have Miller Hall Road running kind of off at an angle between the yellow and the orange. Robbins Road is at the top of those orange and yellow parcels. The different colored parcels represent large properties that are under the ownership of various LLCs and LTDs that we believe are potential developers waiting for the sewers to get up that way to develop property. So we don't want to lose sight of that area. Going on to the next slide. So what do we do from here? First, the committee wants to hear from you. In addition to the feedback that you can provide tonight during the comments section this evening, the township will also be conducting a community survey. We urge you as residents and business owners to fill out that survey. Encourage your neighbors, if they're not here tonight, to be on the lookout for this survey so that they can complete it. We need as much feedback as we can to understand the vision of the community. Tonight, we also just wanted to provide an introduction of what is coming your way. We know it's a lot of information. We've been working on this since May. We've had a few months to digest it. But we understand if this is the first time you're hearing this, it can hit you, rather quickly, and you need time to digest it. So we just wanted to introduce what's happening so that you can understand that. We also want to understand what strategies you as a community would support to help control this growth that we are concerned is coming this way, no matter what you do. So the committee would like to explore further educational efforts with the community to explain different concepts that can have different planning concepts, different zoning tools, different economic tools, and those sorts of things that can be utilized. So down the road, we'll be doing future education sessions on those. And then finally, we urge you as residents to continue to provide feedback to us. It's essential that we keep the communication channels open to reflect the community's desires. If you haven't already done so, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, make sure you sign the sign-in sheet before you leave tonight. Make sure we have your address, your email address, so that we can push things out to you via email. And if you don't have email or you don't want to do email or texting, note that so that we know that we have your mailing address. There's also an area where you can sign up to volunteer. By signing up and putting your email address and your contact information does not automatically volunteer you to do anything. It is strictly so that you can get information. We hope that you want to volunteer though, and there is a box on that sign-in sheet where you can check to volunteer. And we anticipate moving forward that we're going to have specific subcommittees that will be looking at specific geographic areas or specific planning and different tools as we go forward. So if you're interested in being on one of those subcommittees, please check the box and someone will be in touch with you. So let's go on to the next slide. As much as it's important for the township to be in touch with you, we hope that you will stay in touch with us as well. Pay attention to the township's website. This is a picture of their welcome page, their public notice page, where they put their public notices, their coming events. So make sure you visit that for continual updates and future events. The other thing is that the Strategic Planning Committee has just created its own email address, which is up on the screen, SPC for Strategic Planning Committee at harlemtwp.com. That email, when it's sent, goes straight to the 7 committee members. So it's a direct line to those committee members. They will decide which one is the best one, to answer the specific question, and someone will be back in touch with you, but it goes directly to them. So please utilize that tool. It is a lifeline for staying in touch with the township. So with that, I'm gonna wrap things up here. I want to thank you for taking your time to be with us tonight and to listen to all of this. We greatly appreciate it. We are going to enter into a question and answer session, but before we do that, I want to set a few ground rules. First of all, please be kind and courteous to your neighbors. Please make sure we're having one person speaking at a time. Step up to speak, but step back and let your neighbors speak. We would like everyone who is able and willing to come to the microphone to ask your question. The strategic planning committee is going to come up and sit in these chairs up in the front. I'm going to be facilitating the questions, answering them to the best that I can, but if there's something specific to the township, one of the strategic planning committee members might chime in with some additional background to that question and answer as well. We understand that not everybody is able to come to the microphone or maybe doesn't want to come in front of this large crowd. So you will see that there are note cards and little golf-sized pencils in the middle of your table. Please fill out your question on that card, and somebody will be coming around and collecting those. And as we're shifting between people at the microphone, I'll go through those questions as well and get those out there and answer those as well. Finally, we have a number of people who are on Zoom. And if somebody on Zoom wants to ask a question, we ask that you type it in the chat section. We have our Zoom administrator over here following that, and yes.
Note went out, please send it to Mike at Harlem Township.
Okay. So send that to Harlem Township, and Mike will get that question to me. So with that, oh, and also on the cards, you don't have to put your names. If I didn't say that, don't feel like you have to put any information on there if you just want to ask a question anonymously. So with that, I am going to open it up to questions and ask that the strategic planning committee come up front, and we'll start the question.
Hi there. What I hear so far is once the municipality makes up their mind that they want to annex, it sounds like we don't have a lot of letters like that. So I was wondering if you could provide maybe a brief overview of who you talk about controlling things. What kind of things are you talking about doing?
So there are a number of different things that communities can do to help control it. They can provide different types of zoning tools through planned districts, through conservation zoning districts that will allow higher densities to be clustered in certain areas, but maintain open space, typically about 50%, making sure that the view sheds along your existing roadways are maintained during, throughout development, and making sure that that rural character along those existing roadways is preserved. In addition to zoning, there can be economic development tools. There are things called such as new community authorities, JEDs, TIPs, all kinds of different things that can be utilized to help make the township competitive with a municipality when combined with the zoning. So there are things that the township can do that developers will be enticed with, and then that gives you control over what everything looks like, and also gives you revenue to provide the services that you need as a township.
So my question is, I have two of them. Laying the sewer pipe doesn't automatically mean annexation.
Correct.
Second thing is that these allegedly large developments all have to go through the trustees to have their zoning approved. Is that correct?
If it is not annexed. If it's annexed, then it goes to that community that's annexed.
So that's the chicken and egg question for me. When does annexation usually historically occur? After the building or before?
Before.
So they initiate before?
Yes. And usually there's annexation agreements that are put in place that outline everything. So the developer knows up front what he or she is getting. and that they know for sure when it's annexed that this is what they will have. And they do it all before they build.
So zoning changes made now don't necessarily carry over into the annexation.
So what I'm saying is that if the township is willing to put in zoning tools into their zoning resolution and have them available for developers, that entices them to stay in the township because they can get the zoning they want. And the only thing that they're really getting from the annexing at that point typically is an income tax or sometimes increased property tax. And that's what's left. So sometimes it's beneficial if you have those zoning tools. Now, you can still layer those with economic development tools that do build in some of that within the township. But you can put those zoning tools in upfront to it be enticing to developers to not want to annex.
So that's the only tool is we invite you in, but we have tools that will prevent being annexed.
We have tools that will
Disincentivize.
disincentivize, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll get, and like I said, we will have education sessions on all those different tools to dig deeper into them. But those are some of those out there.
So those key properties that are identified on those maps of potential pathways to annexation, have those owners been contacted?
Not all of them, no. The committee, I believe, at some point wants to reach out to all of them, but it's a matter of timing and understanding.
And the flip side is that there can be incentivizing to those property owners not to sell, or when they do decide to sell, that there's a first offer.
And I think the committee, and I think they can say they disagree with me, I think they understand that, and I think it's on their radar list to talk to them in the future, to let them know this is what we would like to do, but they wanted to get out in front of the community first to make sure that the community understands everything.
Okay, I think the community has a lot more power than what's being conveyed. What I hear is a sense of powerlessness in, especially with our economy, the economy and the slowdown of the housing is actually kind of helping hinder those big developments. So we do have a little bit of time.
Yeah, I just would,
Can you handle that, please?
well, she's coming to the mic, I'm gonna handle one of these. Can the township do anything to stop annexation? I think that kind of goes along with the question that was just asked. There are different tools that can help disincentivize it. There are non-annexation agreements that can be entered into, but a lot of times they have to be coupled with some of these other tools I'm talking about, such as the JED or things like that. So there are different things the township can do. It's a matter of what the township wants to do.
Okay, I have a question.
One second, please. If you don't mind,
Oh, sorry, yep.
Thank you, go ahead.
Okay, we have caught in our little,
Could you use the microphone, please?
certain things in this,
Nobody can, you have to go into the mic,
okay, thank you.
please.
We have fought against certain things coming into our township. And we won. And then somebody ends up taking it to the Supreme Court and we lose. Can this happen here? If we fight whatever it is we're fighting against annexing and we win, can somebody else decide that they didn't like our ruling?
I can't tell you who can and who can't, file lawsuits. That's all in a matter of the courts, but I guess there's always the potential of, somebody filing a lawsuit over something.
And how bad can this get? What are you wanting to bring into our community?
We haven't gotten that far. What we want to do is, look at the specific geographic areas that we reviewed tonight and create subcommittees so that we can start to look at future land uses. I do think, along the southern part, to make it, competitive so that it doesn't get annexed as easily, some kind of service commercial, uses, maybe, call for the strategic plan actually does call for something that is serving commercial in that area. And then I do think some of the housing, maybe to be some of the cluster development.
Over on Harlem Road, they're bringing in so many houses and apartments and condos right now that the traffic's going to be so horrendous. We live on Fancher Road and already we're having trouble. They threw a storage unit across the street from us and it's, we want to know how bad this is going to get.
Yeah. And that's part of what this plan is, so I urge you to find out a person who can help us, like, what's considering.
Will, thank you.
I also, want to mention too, I wanted to mention while I was talking, I don't think I did. But part of this, process will be looking at the transportation system, looking at regional detention, looking at, other, infrastructure needs to help, make sure the township, is at a place that is comfortable, for its residents.
Yes, I have a couple quick questions that they kind of relate to this. There are projects that are possibly in the process of being developed. And I know when I worked the election here in this building, people were asking about one of the properties that are coming up and how that was zoned and everything. Obviously, not everybody is zoned, we know exactly what's happening south of Mill Hall there on Harlem Road. And so there's still signs up about large acreage, but then there were other rumors about a lot more buildings going in there and across the road. There were buildings going up next to the golf course. And then she heard that the Royal American had sold and that there were going to be 30 high-end homes. I don't know if you can believe the rumors, but obviously with everything that's happening, that might be a possibility if it hasn't already been addressed. So where's the committee with that? It's already in process, we're still in process.
For anything that's in the zoning commission right now, of course, the committee is aware of it because we have the zoning inspector and the zoning commission member that are on the committee. So they are aware of anything that has been formally submitted. As far as anything that has not been formally submitted, it's still an exploration stage to understand who they are and what it is that they're proposing.
So if we're not knowledgeable about what's already happened, we go to what website or whatever to find out.
Yeah, so what I would, first of all, what I would suggest is that if you hear something, like, whether you think it's a rumor or not, if you hear something, let us know. One through the email or whatever way that might be. And then as we progress through this, we'll be continuing to update through the website, as well as we can provide your email address, sending out mass emails or, where we are in the process. And at some point in time, I'm sure we'll start mailing, what we found as far as different players that are out there and what they're proposing.
Okay, so I can ask questions on that website then about that, because it looks like.
Email address.
Do the email, because I know some of those roads look like roads that are more like long drives. And where I built some years ago, the road was not standard. And we as homeowners had to bring that up to standard before the township could take it over. So it is a concern.
So the specific area you're asking about, those are two common access drives. They are up to Delaware County standards. It's part of the approval process. They have not been final approved until they've been paved and they're complete. And there's intermediate lots in between of 5 acres or larger. And
Could you speak towards that camera? There's a mic
Yeah.
there.
So there's intermediate lots of 5 acres or larger. There's a 12-acre lot. They're scattered throughout there. Royal American, that has been something that's been going around the township for quite a while. I haven't seen anything. I haven't gotten any calls about potential development. So at this point, I think it's what it is, a rumor. But there is a potential there.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have two questions. One is,
Can you get closer to the mic, please?
sorry,
Thank you.
is that better?
Let's go forward.
Okay. Is there with the annexation, if the farmers, the ones that still want to keep farming, if they put it into a farm preserve, will that possibly hold off the annexation if they can't get the land that they want?
So, the typical type of annexation that you see is a type one annexation, which is where the property owners agree to it, not the annexation. There's really not much that anybody can do. There is potential to be pulled in through other types of annexations when you're not planning onto it. And then to your specific question of, agricultural districts and other tools like that, let me look into that for you as far as annexation.
Okay, because I think the majority of our community does not want what's coming here. And I'm just surprised at how much it had came, you know, in some very Galena, I grew up here and we were farm country. I mean, we were country and now it's just getting out of control. And I feel like if it get annexed, we're in big trouble. I don't think we'll have any say whatsoever.
Can I add something to that?
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's a great question. So I have a little knowledge about farmers who want to preserve farmland as farmland. My wife's family, Gabriel's, her uncle put 180 acres, I believe, into an agricultural easement, which is a program through Delaware County. And so sometimes it's not very well known about, but it is a mechanism to basically, I think what you end up doing is kind of selling or turning the right to your land over, but you can use it as long as you choose to do so. And you get some remuneration from the county. I don't know how much that is. It's kind of a give and take, but it literally, if there's ever a forever, it is forever presented as only ag. It can never be schools or big box stores or whatever. It's strictly ag.
And, to piggyback on that, so yeah, there is the easement program. It's been utilized in Delaware County, it's been utilized in Fairfield County, which is where I have a lot of experience as well. I don't know if it prevents annexation, but it would ensure that that property itself is continued as farm, even if it got annexed.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would stop the annexation. That's what I would have to look into that for you. Agricultural districts, they do have some potential to stop expansion of right of ways and expansion of utilities. I've seen that in Fairfield County where those have been used. But again, that's only that right of way area. It's not, and it doesn't, to my knowledge, it doesn't prevent annexation, but it does provide some additional barriers.
Okay, yeah, because I think this community probably doesn't want to turn into Westerville or, you know, I know everyone that I talk to does not want this development whatsoever. I know I'm not for, there's no such thing as responsible growth. It's where the money takes us, you know, and that's how I feel. And so it's just frustrating to see how much we have changed in this community and how much it's just everything, not just the growth, but everything that's coming with it. And then to back that, so I live on Miller Pond, Woodtown, in that property that was, we got on the referendum so that what are we going to do with even just the development we have, the flooding? I mean, the roads are flooding horribly over there with the water, and I don't know if they're going to come in there to do that, because is that going to change the flow of the water to flood even more, or that's another thing, you know. I know my neighbor behind us, I mean, we had some good flooding. My sister, she had one day because I couldn't go on the road, it was flooded so bad. So I was curious about that also, if what we're gonna do with that, of flooding.
Yeah, to speak to that specific question, that specific area, I cannot speak to that, but in general, yes, this committee does want to address stormwater. And most specifically, I believe they want to look at regional detention to help control that in the future.
Thank you.
While he's coming, I'll do one of these questions. Does the township have any way to contest annexation besides appealing to voluntary thing? So if it is a type one annexation, like I just mentioned, and all the landowners have signed off on it, there is not much that can be done. The county commissioners are the ones that it gets petitioned to, and it's pretty much a process that they just have to sign off on it, and there's not much that can be contested. There are several different types of annexation, so a couple of the other ones have different avenues. But it's the type one that we see most often take place, and that's the one that is very hard to contest.
Hi, thank you. I'm Dan, everybody, your neighbor on Northside Road. And this young lady before me answers a lot of my questions as far as right of ways and stuff like that. One other question I had was in regards to park districts and conservation areas, our Harlem Township Park District, preservation parks, parks to the southwest in Clayton Township and Franklin County Metro parks. They can get conservation easements along parcels of property that potentially could stop the sewer growth in Harlem Township.
Yes. So, one of the things that we have talked about as a committee is how much effort or how much does the township want to support, things like that. And it's even been discussed as possibly something, do we want to ask the committee, would they support funding to buy property to, purchase for parks that would help preserve area. I've also had, conversations with neighboring communities. If you, I don't know how many of you realize, but New Albany, on the north side of New Albany, just south of Harlem Township, their whole plan is to expand that metro park and to create a green buffer along the whole north side of New Albany. Now you still have Plain Township and Columbus in that area that are players that could get up this way. But that's what their goal is for that area through there. And maybe there's a potential partnership of partnering with them to create a larger green buffer along the south side of the township too. And then that helps create a barrier. So there's different ways that we can do it. But it takes partners, it takes groups, and it takes knowing what everybody wants to do.
Thank you. I have one more question, then a suggestion. Section 709.46 of the Ohio Revised Code in regards to annexation talks about the disapproval or approval of a merger of annexation. And it talks about how it will go to a vote. Does that vote go to the Delaware County Commissioner? Does that go to the members of Harlem Township to vote on?
If you're talking about a specific merger with a municipality, that is a ballot issue. Annexation goes to the county commissioner.
Okay, thank you. And then my last suggestion would be that the zoning board or the board of trustees enact their rights of moratorium, which is a legal authorization period to delay any performance and a legal obligation or suspend an activity until the steering committee meets and we get some questions answered and things like that. So thank
That's a
you.
good point. Thank you.
So I think we've identified a few communities that we don't want to be like, Orange, New Albany, etc. Are there any communities you would consider success stories or a pattern that we would like to do a similar process with, or that you could point to, like, hey, we did this, we won, like that kind of thing?
So I don't have like a whole community that I pointed out to the committee, but one area that I have pointed out to them is Clark Station Road. That's an area where they have maintained that visual corridor of the rural character as far as trees and pushing development behind that where you can't see it. So when you drive down that road, you don't know that there's anything else around there. But when you look at the aerial, you see the houses back there. So I've given that as an example. But we will continue to look at best practices for other things, especially some of these other preservation ideas that are coming up regarding green space and parks.
But are there communities who have really had such powerful forces surrounding them, because we are surrounded by a lot of really powerful driving forces? And do you know of any communities who have successfully avoided annexation, or just kind of things going in a direction that they would want?
Harlem Township is an area where they were really pushed by potential annexation from the Dublin area, and they've been able to keep back from that being annexed. But again, there's housing related to that, there's commercial related to that. But it is an example of how they were able to retain control over it and get the design that they desired.
And then ultimately, and maybe you don't know, maybe none of us have the answer to this. Ultimately, are we pushing the inevitable 20, 30 years down the road, or are we able to kind of secure something for our children and for the future for this area of the greater Columbus area to maintain?
I think if it's done right, You can create a township that will be be a place for your children and your future generations to come along. We just have to get it right. We only get one shot at it, right? So, but there are ways to plan this and create a township that is a community for your future generations.
Two questions, was already on once. My voice is going.
I'm sorry. Yep.
We've already been behind the information 8 ball with regard to 5-acre lot developments versus 2 acres. And so historically, communication and the will of the people have not been honored. And so I'm just sharing, I have a website coming up, harlemzoningnews.com. It's not affiliated with the township, but it's to collect signatures and emails for referendums. And also I'm working with Genoa Township and their council, because they've already been through it. The playbook is not new. This playbook we're dealing with is old and seasoned. And there's a lot brighter people and more knowledgeable that know how to strategically deal with this, so that people who do want to really feel a sense of a rural community and sense that we're making progress in continuing our heritage, they're involved in consulting as well. So if you see signs in a week or two that are up Harlem Zoning News, please tell your neighbors to go log in, no spam, and it's just when there's referendums or things like that. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, he's coming to the microphone. One question is, our school is in this community, our school in the community can't grow anymore. We can't afford to offer developers taxes. So there's no question, it's just a comment. Have you looked into a transfer tax that sellers pay that is used for land preservation? Doing this in New York, Eastern Long Island with goods except 2%. I'm assuming you're talking about transfer of development rights where we preserve one area and be able to transfer that density. Yeah. So the laws are a little bit different in Ohio, but there probably are some strategic ways that you could collect taxes to do that. So I think that there has been conversation among the committee about different ways of generating revenue so that property could be bought to protect. It's just a matter of how we can do that within the law framework of the law in Ohio.
And my question is, I heard you talk about sheds a couple of times. You know, we live in a rough watershed from Woodtown. So could we, through zoning, should we be adding extra, extra on the developers to maintain that shed instead of us? That's where all this extra water is coming from, you know. So the more houses you put in, the more you got, you know, groundwater. So could that deter some of that and slow that down if they have to, you know, come up with the development of the shed itself?
Yeah, and again, that's something that the committee wants to look into is stormwater management, reading retention, understanding how to collect that in a comprehensive way, and then making sure that maintenance by the developers, that is essential, and that it's not coming back to the community. That also takes partnership with the county, because the county does a lot with the stormwater, has a lot of control over that stormwater issue. So we have reached out to county officials to start those conversations. But yes, that is on our radar screen to look into.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yep. We have, what we presented, so, yep. Yep. There's a question about what do you mean by regional detention? What I mean by that is instead of every developer building his or her own detention pond to retain the water so that it doesn't exceed the amount of water prior to development, but the development doesn't exceed that original amount. Instead of them doing their own individual detention pond, the township creates a vision for a larger detention pond strategically placed in the township based upon contours, soils, et cetera. And then, those lands get preserved as open space with the regional detention and then everything drains to those areas. And then it's released at a rate that is pre-development rates. Thank you. I got it. These are all one. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, a couple things. First, Jennifer, happy birthday. She's young. Second, for the person who asked about Royal American Lakes, I looked it up already. They still own it in Bentry. Also, one of my concerns, I'm going to back up for a second. My family has lived out here since 1941. My grandparents moved out here when 605 was a dirt road. So a lot of people in here to me are interlopers. Development to a certain extent is inevitable. But I understand there are some things that can be done, but it may already be too late. The one thing that I would ask the township to do is pick one source for us to look to for official information. I get the Delaware Gazette because that was supposed to be the source. And now a lot of stuff is showing up on Facebook instead. So,
Yeah, part of when we send the survey out is to ask what everybody's main communication mode is so that they can help identify what those best sources are or single source. The problem is that everybody has a different venue for receiving information. So it's best to have all avenues, but making sure that it's a consistent message that's getting out to the public.
then there needs to be some kind of distinction between legal notice.
Yep.
Because it has to be published,
Exactly.
and what the heck, here's what we're doing.
I agree.
Okay, thanks.
So I have two plans here. One is kind of revolving around annexation. So an economic development tool. So our annexation agreement and land sales to investors or developers visible or behind closed doors. I assume this committee is monitoring. So there is a portion of the Ohio Revised Code that allows economic development incentives to be discussed in executive session. To my knowledge, there is nothing going on in Harlem Township that is being discussed. It would be in connection, that would be in connection with Delaware County. To my knowledge, there's nothing in that, but I just, so that you are aware, there is an executive session clause in the Ohio Revised Code. Which means if there's somebody discussing it with a New Albany or a Columbus or a Galena, they can go in executive session and then we wouldn't know about it as a committee. We are monitoring this kind of stuff, but if they go into executive session, we may not know exactly what it is. We'll see on the agenda that they went into executive session for economic development purposes, but we'll know nothing more than that.
I've lived in this community for a long time. Anyway, I know a lot of people here are on Delta water. Me, I'm on a well, all right? My well is 48 feet deep, okay? My brother lived in the north end of Gahanna. And when they put the sewer line from Gahanna up to New Albany, they disrupted that water cable. That lawsuit is still going on, and that was 20 years ago. Where does something like that fall with this committee, or does it still fall on the individual? Down there, 12 of them got together to sue for that purpose. My brother still gets papers on it. He don't live there anymore because everything just got kept getting crowded out. So is that what we're looking for here too, is I know people up on Woodtown, they're worried about the watershed. Me, I'm worried about the water that's underneath. Plus, even the water that travels in our streams and creeks. You know, that we do have, what watershed we have.
Yeah, so as I have said, before, stormwater is typically handled at the county level, but I believe that there is, ways that the township can control some of that through their zoning. Groundwater, is typically through the subdivision process as well, which is at the county level. So I think this committee has, identified a need to work closely with the county officials to make sure that they're understanding where all that is.
Do you know, roughly how deep they put a sewer line in, they can put one in?
We, have that question out to, Delaware County of how deep, that sewer is gonna be at that,
Yeah,
where it comes in.
the one from Gahanna to, New Albany with the pump station, they went 40 feet deep. And that destroyed 12 people there on 62 real well. I think there's only one person that still lives there now. The rest of them gave up and went down.
Let's see, assuming we as a majority want little high density levels as possible, we hope, do we have against, what hopes do we have against these investors who already own so much land? Once they annex, what can we do? So the land that is owned by developers, the township would just have to work with them regarding the potential zoning for it. If they don't like the zoning that they're getting, from the township, then they can annex. Once it's annexed, there is no control over it. So, that's that question. And then explain death and tips. I'm not gonna get into detail about those tonight because those are future educational sessions, but I will say JED are joint economic development districts. They are an agreement between a municipality and a township to generate an income tax on new businesses that sign into the JED, existing businesses unless they want to join. And then TIFs are tax increment finance district or programs, and they are a taxing mechanism so that when land is developed, it takes the difference between the tax value prior to development and the tax value after development, and it gets that capture rate or capture amount, and it diverts that money over to improvement for that specific area, water, sewer, what you want, probably won't need it for sewer, but streets, roads, those sorts of things. So it's a way to take that tax revenue and shift it for infrastructure improvement. Again, we'll get into more detail on those later on down the road. These are switching to zoning questions. I'm confused on the minimum legal lot size. 2 acres, 5 acres, when did it change from 5 and can't we go back? I would say, maybe one of you to expand upon, where you are when that. It's my understanding that it's always been the zoning that you have today, but if you have more information.
Yeah, so the quick summary of that is FR1 residential properties, the net 2 acre minimum, and AR1 are net 5 acre. And those have been in the resolution for since I think early 2000s is when that changes. Early 2000s is when that change was made.
The farmland and then the 2 acre ones, the 5 acre, what is the difference between them? You just said the number of sheds. What is it, 5 acre, 1 and 2 acre, what does that mean?
Just the
Or be a 2 acre and 25. Is it the farmland that's owned by,
not necessarily. So, I mean, without getting into overall.
Let me try to put some explanation on this. In 1988, when the resolution was first written, they were 1 acre lots. And they are in FR1. That got changed sometime about early 90s. Came with 2 acres. So we gained from 1 acre to 2 acres from that. A lot of that has to do with septic systems. You know, 1 acre, back then, 1 acre like septic system, now is what we used to. And it's been 2 acres ever since then. So it's not like it's a new, just happened, it's been in for a long time. I don't know. I mean, to change resolution, that's gonna take, you know, an act by the township zoning commission and the associate. I don't think you could get 5 acres in any township. That'd be a really big stretch. But that's kind of the history. It's been a long time. That's really just about once changed. Just 2 acres that it's been there. When the resolution, when the resolution was first back in 1988, it was to 1 acre. But then you just, was, written resolution was on 1988.
So, Bernie, in order to
Any changes approved by the trustees?
Because we had to get a referendum because they wanted to take it down to 2 acres, to have it for lot 5. That's what I'm confused with, like, where is it for 2 acres to 5 acres, where we have to get a referendum to from getting it down to 2 acres?
Any agricultural 5 acre lot does not have any restrictions on it. So that's why when they do 5 acres, they have no restrictions as far as the zoning. Anything else you want to change that?
Well, I think what you're asking there is, in order to go down to a 2 acre lot, they have to meet the requirements, which is road frontage. So AR1, 300 feet of road frontage, unless it's a non-road frontage parcel, which is a flag lot. Somebody can take a road frontage AR1 parcel that has 300 feet of road frontage and split it into or rezone it into an FR1 parcel because they have the road frontage, they have the net acreage minimum. But all that has to go through the process there is that goes before the zoning commission first, they vote upon it, then it goes to the trustees for final approval. Don't want to speak for the trustees here, but the trustees just can't decline that application because they don't want it. If it meets all the parameters set forth, they have, I think they have to approve it, but that's when the community, such as Woodtown Road, you guys felt strongly that, hey, we don't like this, filed the referendum, went to the vote, and
Is there a location that we know where we find out the lots are up to that, so that we know where they're at, so that we can get referendums, so that we keep that from happening? Is there somewhere that we know where lots are up there? Because that little sign, if we're not driving around, we don't see it. I just have to drive every day through there and call.
anything that's up for a zoning change is available on the website, harlemtwp.com. At the top, there's a little band that says public notices. Any application that comes before any board is also identified on here. And if you're adjacent and joining to residents, you will also get notified. So there's many avenues. And if anybody wants to reference what the true difference is, the long version of AR1 to FR1, reference our zoning code, which is also on the website, section 7, section 8, and that will, I could go all night on what the true differences are, but I think that would be something you guys can do a little research on there, and it'll give, there's few differences. The big one is net acreage. That's the big one. So thank you for the question.
I just want to clarify one thing too is when, something does get put on a ballot for a referendum, that is potential for somebody who already owns that land as a developer to annex. That gives them reason to annex. So just be aware that every time something's referendum, that you are potentially setting yourself up to that being annexed and you getting more density than what you're even getting with what the township has, allowed for that rezoning. So you have to look at both sides of it. You can't just look at it and say, I want to keep my 2 acres and my 5 acres. You have to look at what is coming down the road from you, in all directions.
I agree with you, but hammering annexation, almost like a threat.
If you're gonna speak, you need to come up to the microphone. Quite a few questions already.
Sure.
So can we let someone else speak, please? Come up. Just come to the microphone, please. People can't hear you. We have 35 people on Zoom that would like to hear what you're
I
saying.
think you're wise. Thank you. So the reason why it's 2 acres is, and changed in the master plan, and the trustees have to agree to do it. Somebody comes in and says, I want to change this to 2 acres, they have to do it. Who created those handcuffs for the trustees? The trustees. We had Stephanie who asked the question of the trustees, if 100% of Harlem Township residents wanted 5 acres, would we still for 2 acres? And the answer was yes. And so that's what I referenced. There's some history there. They're wonderful and they work hard or made this community a better place, but the zoning issue has always been a little bit of a rub. And so, and when you talk about this annexation, I've heard people ask questions, and it's always like, it's the knee-jerk threat. Annexation. That's a long ways away. They're building sewer pipes, and there are concerns, but it's not the automatic that you lay out that you've been conveying.
So I want to give an example of what I'm conveying to you. So Cal and this is a city against a city, not a township, but it's the same situation. Canal Winchester has warehouses going up all along Route 33. They got a rezoning application for another warehouse. It went through the planning commission, went to council. A number of people like this room came out and said, we do not want any more warehouses. And the council turned down the zoning. The landowner immediately went to City of Columbus and said, I'm dropping my annexation agreement with Canal Winchester, and I'm going to the City of Columbus. That exact same warehouse was going to go up, and Canal Winchester was going to have the traffic from it and get no income tax from it and have to maintain the road from that traffic, but not reap any of the economic benefits, but still have that in their backyard.
And see, I thought the annexation for that came along before with Rickenbacker Air Force Base,
That's, I'm not even.
because that's all contiguous.
Stop 33 Shot Farm. Go look it up. It just happened in the last 6 months. And so then what happened was the community realized this, and the council initiated a rezoning and allowed it to go through in an emergency action to get that, so they could get
Thank
that
you.
back.
And I hope I haven't insulted you, but I'm not going to let fear dictate zoning wishes and desires. Does that make sense?
I understand that.
The great thing about misinformation is never anybody can speak misinformation. That's the best part of misinformation. We have so many social media things out there that anybody can go on and say they're official. Anybody can start the site. There's nobody in this room on this committee that is making threats. The only reason for this meeting was to try to start helping everybody understand. Is annexation a real possibility? Yeah. Is it definitely going to happen? No. But we don't
I tell people, I always try to convey this message when I'm talking to somebody. I don't like a bunch of houses. But if you have a farmer that's sitting over here, a couple hundred acres, he has no kids that want to commit. That's his 401k. Who in this room has the right to tell that man, you can't do it? Now, we don't want you to do it. We would like for you not to. The trustees try to do things, we have to do things with it. There's an ORC that we have to abide by. I didn't agree with it. I didn't like the split. I'm one of your trustees. But guess what? I had to, by law, approve that. You know, I guess if we want to change things, we need to go a lot higher up than the 3 trustees. You can't keep telling people, you know, if we need to get a definition, you know, the only Woodtown, God bless you for what you did. High density is not 2.5 acres. It's not. High density is 3.5 houses per acre. If the southern half of Harlem Township, and I'm going to say it, gets annexed, that developer doesn't give us one. He's going to put 3.5 houses per acre, or whatever he can fit in there. And then it's a stepping stone. We need to, before we need your reactions to a referendum, we need to start thinking about how bad could it be if that man decides, you know what, you won't let me do that on my property, I'm going to go to Mr. Developer. Like I said, this can come from anybody. So make sure you find out who you're listening to.
Talking about information, one of the questions is where can we see the 3 areas to think a little bit more about them? This presentation will be on the township website. You can visit that on the website, study this area.
So I don't think the guy that spoke earlier was speaking misinformation. The man was talking about the referendum, it's just as a side note. But on the planning, the 2021 plan that was made, it talks about multifamily housing, condos and apartments. Is that part of the plan to help thwart annexation? Are we looking at condos and apartment buildings?
Potentially, like I said, we haven't decided exactly what it is, but that would be a potential of mixed uses with condos and senior housing and that sort of thing to help protect that border along the
And so as residents, we have no say in that?
No, I've said tonight, make sure you sign up for subcommittee that will guide that future land use of those areas. But nothing has been talked about for those areas as far as what.
Well, I was just concerned because it's in the strategic plan already that was decided in 2021. And is there commercial stuff? I understand that, and you've done all of that work. I appreciate, I mean, I didn't volunteer to be on there because I cannot imagine the work that went into it. But still it's there, so it just makes me a little anxious because I work for the state, and usually when it's written down in something, then something happens behind the scenes, and then you blink and it's done. So I guess it's like, then you talk about, you know, commercial operations. So I'm just trying to get an idea of what Harlem Township might look like to help Harlem Township stay, besides the park and agricultural and tree corridors and things like that. What kind of vision is there?
So the strategic plan that you're talking about does talk about service, commercial along Fancher Road. Talked about, you know, some different types of housing along that area. I think again, to the reason why this committee has been put together, is to define what that future vision looks like now that we understand what's at your doorstep, and how does that redefine, and how do we come, what different ideas can we come up with to protect as much as we can, but not to the point where we're giving it up, to adjacent communities. This is another communication question. Are the zoning regulations online at the Harlem Township site? Yes, they are under the zoning tab. Being against all development is not realistic. Is anything being done to shift collective attitude toward how to make the best of things and control what we can instead of the negative perception except for farms and 5-acre housing? I think that's part of what we're here to talk about tonight is to how can we come up with a collective vision that balances all of those different land uses in the community and keep it within a realistic framework. Does the committee plan to have anybody attend Delaware County or Middle Ohio Regional Planning Commission meeting? I think that's something that we have talked about at our strategic planning committee meetings. I know a couple of the committee members are very active at the county level as far as staying in touch with commissioners and those sorts of things. I attend Middle Ohio Regional Planning Commission meetings. I relay that back to the committee when I do attend those. And then long-term, having somebody that can do that for them, I think is essential and is something that's on my radar screen for them moving forward is they need to be staying in tune with those things and making sure that they're staffed in a way that can make that happen.
And I also attend county regional planning this month.
Thank you. Let's see, just moved here, 605 roundabouts, when and where the big truck speeding on Beverly or Beverly, I think, you know, I know it's not college, but it's 605. Okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we can, I'll follow up on these specific questions, but I have, regarding roundabout, I have had conversations with the Franklin County engineer who is in the process of looking at a roundabout at 605 in Walnuts, which is the dog leg at 605. Just south of Harlem Township. So they are in a feasibility study for that right now. They expect when they come out of that they will move into engineering. And I think with the target 2025 of having that done. They also have other improvements on that southern area. We've had conversations with the Delaware County Engineer's Office. Long range on their thoroughfare plan. They have an extension of Smothers Road and then curving up to a roundabout at Sanford Road. But in conversations with the county engineer's office, that is a line on the paper until there is development driven activity to move that forward. They don't have anything on the books to make that happen at this time.
Roundabout plan at this point.
Okay. The actual roundabout would be 2023 at Fancher. It's the extension of the road that's not planned, that's not, they don't have funding. At 2023. Can the township incorporate to prevent annexation? That goes back to the merger question. That has to go to the ballot.
Okay, sorry, I have another question. This might be dumb. So basically, every lot of land that goes up to be zoned for whatever, it doesn't matter the location, it can be annexed. So in the middle, like the Wood Town.
Yeah.
So how do we know where that is so that we know which ones we can put a referendum on so that we don't have to worry about the annexation, which, you know, how do we know that? Because I feel like listening to this, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels this way, basically we should just let everything happen and we really don't have a say. And I know you say we do, but I really feel like we don't, because you say if we put up a referendum, we get annexed, or we risk being annexed. how do we know what locations that are risk for being annexed as opposed to other ones that aren't, so that we know which ones to put up for referendum to keep that from being 5-2, because I know someone, what that question was, how do we change our mindset? But I think it's hard because everyone moves out here because they want that country feel. Well, it's getting taken away and we're not going to have that country feel anymore. You know, I've been here my whole life. My families were both here. It is very different, and we want that country feel, and if we can't stop it, then I guess we want to know how we do, because I feel like we're defeated if we can't. And if there's locations that we can put a referendum up and keep it from annexed or, you know, getting annexed, at least how do we find that out?
So the 3 areas that were presented as immediate concerns, those are the areas that are the biggest threat for annexation right now. And even then, it's not, the cities are not touching those borders, right? And there are parcels in between, and in order to annex, you have to be contiguous. But our concern is that there are large pieces of land that are being assembled between those municipal boundaries and these larger areas that I had up on the screen. So those 3 areas, I would be very concerned about, and if you referendum something and then those areas, that those potentially could be annexed.
Can we email the committee to find out which were states to do that? So I mean, I don't know.
I think the biggest thing here is what I'm hearing here is a communication effort to help people understand these different things. And I think this committee really wants to improve this communication effort.
So I'm sitting next to Mike Cavalier, who is the head of the zoning commission. And, you know, one of the things that Holly pointed out earlier in the evening was that there are a lot of meetings in the joint. But zoning commission is 12 months, and one of them is typically where they take up submittals to make changes, but the other one is a workshop. And so as residents of the township have concerns like this, that's where you ought to go. I mean, if you hear something and you're trying to get specific feedback, then engage with the commission at one of, Monday nights typically, right, Mike? It's Mondays. Second Monday, but those are out there on the website, on the internet site for the township. But that's the place to go have a conversation before the thing just starts to snowball, because then you can trade off ideas. And, you know, frankly, I mean, this turnout tonight is spectacular. And what we're looking for is more engagement like this more regularly at those various meetings, because that's where the work gets done. And that's where you can raise those kinds of topics. So I didn't mean to jump.
Have a list of you said, can you put it back up for at the end of where we can contact you for that with it on there?
Yeah, can back in the back, can you put that email up? Yep.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna kind of piggyback off what Steve said, young lady. I understand you've been here all your life. And that's, no, it's about education. I was the same way. I've only been here 6 years. And I started getting more and more involved in asking questions. So like today, this room is huge. The only time we step out is when there's a problem. You need to be in this today, tomorrow, basically till you die, if you're living in this area. If you're not, then you can't complain. You need to do here now, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Because we only come out in droves when you don't want it, or it's in your area. You gotta help the South End if you're in the north, the east, everywhere. So this meeting tonight should be like this for all their meetings now. And if it's not, go to Zoom. They got them on Zoom. Don't get me wrong, I'm bad. I don't do it. But I at least try to check the website once a month, if not more, if I find the time. Or if I do hear rumors, or if I do see signs, I go check it out. So that's my little 2 cents from everybody just about education. Now, I do have a question. Could the township on the website, can you get like alerts set up? Like, so if people wanted to get alerts, that way they know what's going on with new applications. You know, more so probably with applications that are like huge. I don't know if we want to, you know, tell everybody, oh, here's a 2 acre, or here's someone that's current just wants to do something different to their property. I don't know if we could do alerts.
And then I know it's been televised or Zoom today, but are these all being kept on, the Zooms being recorded and then uploaded to the website currently?
This meeting is being recorded.
Right.
And it will be posted to the website. I don't think as a matter of practice, almost all of them are recorded and are available if someone wanted to go look at it.
But it's on the website?
No.
And the only reason I ask is,
Doesn't,
One will be though.
correct,
this one will be, and I guess that's something for the trustees to take under consideration is how much more they want to post out.
well, and that's kind of the things I said, you know, even when I was on part of the comprehensive plan back before the pandemic and during the pandemic. You know, you look at other townships, the Genoas, the Liberties, those guys are a lot more active. Yes, I know it takes money, and right now I know the committee, you guys are doing this on your own time, and I understand that, and I appreciate it. I know what the work you guys are doing. But at the same time, communication is key, as we've all pointed out for the last 6 years since I've been here, and we still keep talking about it. Well, it's 6 years ago and still not there yet. So I don't know if there's grants or something to help us, because I know we don't have the money or whatever, but we got to get more and more up to thing of the social media and all that. And I'm sorry for those that say, I don't have social media, I don't understand it. Then you got to find that way of trying to figure it out, or checking websites. I get it, trust me. And then one other last question is, to kind of help stop it, or maybe not even try to do this, combine township or like join Galena. I know it's probably not what the best is, but if we're able to go in numbers, that way we can kind of control a little more of it. Has that ever been thought about or even possible?
I think you're discussing a merger.
Yes,
Yeah, and again, that would be.
like with the Galena or with
Yeah,
the
that-
Trenton Township.
That would be a valid issue to merge with a municipality. I'd like that.
Real quickly, you were talking about,
Jennifer, can you step up?
all right, you were talking about trying to get the information out to everybody. We've actually talked about putting it up on a YouTube channel so that the meetings are going to be accessible. So that is something we have talked about. Okay, because we want to get the information out to you. We're trying to get the information out to you. So I want everyone to understand, we are working really hard to get that out. If you have suggestions for how to get it out, like if we're missing something, let us know. I mean, we are trying to get out there. So I am thrilled at how many people are here. That means you're all very interested in what we're doing. And we're looking forward to seeing a lot of these faces again while we're going.
I think we have one more here, and then I think that's it. It looks like we're wrapping up here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My question is in regards, I guess, basically to City Columbus utilities, because I thought the City of Columbus had passed a law that any sewer or water service into a property will be automatically annexed into the City of Columbus. Therefore, if a developer ties into those utilities, it's Columbus property. Is that correct?
Back in the day, there were those laws in place. There is a specific agreement between Delaware County and the City of Columbus regarding service of sewers within the Harlem Township area. Does not require annexation. It also doesn't prohibit annexation. It's new on.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're gonna wrap.
I just want to make sure we understand this referendum and annexation. Basically, you're saying it's going to come down to property owner's choice, whether they want to work with Harlem Township or they're not going to work, Harlem Township's not going to work with them to facilitate annexation. So I just don't want people to think referendum will block annexation.
Referendum will not block it, because that property, actually, it wouldn't encourage
Them to annex, that's
to
what I'm saying.
annex it, because that developer obviously is wanting to develop, and if they're being referendum to not be able to do what they want, then they can go to the neighboring community.
Right,
If they're-
or a property owner that may say, hey, I can be where I want to be with 2 acre lots and work with Harlem Township. Whenever referendum comes up and says, we're not going to do that, then I'll just give the new law and say, do whatever you want with it and walk away with what they want. I just want to make sure everybody.
All right.
Yeah.